In our headlines on this Wednesday afternoon, August 21st, here in South Korea. Tropical storm Jongdari weakens into a tropical depression earlier than expected, with no reports of major casualties, but rain remains in quite a few places. Over in the U.S., former President Barack Obama addresses a Democratic National Convention on its second night, advocating for Vice President Kamala Harris's run for the top office. Meanwhile, in Europe, Russia claims it has captured an eastern small Ukrainian town that is strategically significant in terms of logistics as part of its response to a surprise incursion by Kyiv in recent times. Tropical storm Jongdari has reportedly waned in strength, but rain continues across most of the nation today. Our Shin Ha-young starts us off.
Typhoon Jongdari, which had been moving north along the west and south coasts, weakened into a tropical depression as of 9 p.m. on Tuesday, according to the Korea Meteorological Administration. It has weakened earlier than expected, and even at its peak, the maximum wind speed barely met the criteria for a typhoon, which is at least 17 meters per second. Although there was no major damage or injuries reported, various minor incidents were reported across the nation. The Ministry of the Interior and Safety reported that as of 6 p.m. Tuesday, 13 vehicles were flooded in Uljugun in Ulsan City. Off the coast of Goseong-gun, Gyeongsang-namdo Province, a fishing boat sank, but the 4 crew members were rescued. On Jeju Island, flight operations were disrupted, with 1 flight cancelled and 145 delayed out of 495 due to bad weather. As Jongdari moved north, it brought hot and humid air, causing a spike in electric power demand across the country. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, as of 5 p.m. Tuesday, the estimated electricity demand reached an all-time high of 97.1 gigawatts. Rain clouds also reduced solar power efficiency in the Honam region in the southern part of Korea, which accounts for 40% of the nation's total solar power capacity. This led to increased market demand. The surge coincides with Seoul experiencing its longest ever streak of tropical nights when nighttime temperatures don't fall below 25 degrees Celsius, which began on July 21st. While rain is forecasted to temporarily lower temperatures on Wednesday and Thursday, they're expected to rise again on Friday. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol remains open to more talks with his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida, but nothing has been set in stone with regard to a potential visit by the Japanese leader early next month. This is according to the presidential office in Yongsan, in response to a report by Japanese news agency Kyodo News on Tuesday that cited Japanese diplomatic sources speaking about a possible summit here in Seoul in early September. Earlier last week, Prime Minister Kishida announced that he would not run in the party leadership vote scheduled for late September, paving the path for a new prime minister in Japan. Meanwhile, should this latest summit take place, it will be the 10th meeting between the two leaders. Earlier on Tuesday, a North Korean soldier became the second defected to cross the border into South Korea on foot this month. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
A North Korean soldier defected to South Korea on foot early on Tuesday. According to a South Korean military source, the soldier, who is reportedly a staff sergeant, crossed the military demarcation line in the northeastern county of Goseong-gun, Gangwon-do Province. Wearing a military uniform, they are believed to have walked south using the road along the east coast. South Korea's military tracked and monitored the individual and conducted an operation to guide them into the south. The individual has been handed over to relevant authorities. The area where the crossover happened, Goseong, is close to where South Korea has been carrying out loudspeaker propaganda broadcasts in retaliation to North Korea's continued trash balloon deliveries. It's also near where North Korean soldiers were recently seen laying mines as part of the regime's efforts to prevent North Koreans from crossing the border.
You could say that the defection shows there's a loophole in North Korea's mine laying.
South Korea's Unification Ministry said that the number of defections by North Korean soldiers could be an indirect indicator of the conditions faced by the regime soldiers near the border. Tuesday's border crossing comes less than 2 weeks after a North Korean resident defected to South Korea by crossing the maritime border. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The U.S. has reaffirmed the defensive nature of the annual Ulchi Freedom Shield exercise with South Korea amid allegations by North Korea that the drills are a rehearsal for invasion. According to Pentagon Press Secretary Pat Ryder on Tuesday, Pyongyang's claims are false, and the joint military exercise offers Seoul and Washington the opportunity to work together to bolster their defense against regional security concerns. The latest session began this past Monday and is set to last for 11 days. It includes a computer simulation-based command post exercise, concurrent field training, and civil defense drills. Also in the U.S., former President Barack Obama addressed the Democratic National Convention Tuesday night with strong words of support for Vice President Kamala Harris's race to the White House. He spoke of America being ready for a better story and stressed that Kamala Harris is ready for that job. Highlighting her humble beginnings, Obama asserted that Kamala Harris would work on behalf of every American, especially those in the working class, as she is a person who spent her life fighting on behalf of those who need a voice. With regard to the Republican Party's candidate, Obama claimed America does not need 4 more years of chaos. Russia claims it has captured an Eastern Ukrainian town that is strategically significant in terms of logistics as part of its response to a surprise incursion by Kyiv in recent times. Our Jin has more.
Russia said on Tuesday that it had captured the eastern Ukrainian town of New York, a small yet strategically important logistics hub and a significant part of Moscow's push to capture the entire Donetsk region. Donetsk is one of 4 Ukrainian regions that Russia claims to have annexed, while it remains a territorial claim that Kyiv and the West have rejected as illegal. 2 weeks after Ukraine's surprise attack on Kursk, aimed at weakening Russian forces, the Kremlin announced on Tuesday that new military groupings were being formed in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky described the situation in the east as difficult, but the country's top commander says forces have pushed to capture 1,263 square kilometers of territory, including 93 settlements. Washington says its policy of not allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles inside Russia remains unchanged, despite Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky repeatedly seeking permission to use American long-range weapons and British Storm Shadow missiles. While Zelensky continues to reiterate that being able to use long-range weapons would halt the current invasion in Russia, the Biden administration remains concerned about the potential for escalation, adding that the drones currently used by Ukraine have been effective in hitting Russian targets. Washington is also effectively blocking Britain's request to allow Kyiv to use British Storm Shadow missiles, which have a range of up to 250 kilometers, against targets deep inside Russian territory. Jin, Arirang News.
The current COVID-19 outbreak here in Korea is expected to persist until the end of this month. In a briefing earlier on this Wednesday, the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency predicted this summer's resurgence will peak by late August before retreating. Also, according to the agency, the cumulative fatality rate from January 2020 to August 2023 was 0.1%. A stable supply of treatments and test kits has been secured to better protect high-risk groups, including the elderly. And the agency is also urging members of the public to practice a sensible hygiene routine, such as washing hands and wearing face masks if necessary. Also, health officials here have redesignated Mpox, known as monkeypox, as well as an infectious disease that requires border screening. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency on Tuesday announced that those traveling into Korea from 8 African nations, including Rwanda and Kenya, experiencing symptoms such as fever, chills, and swollen lymph nodes, are required to report to quarantine officials upon arrival. This comes as the World Health Organization recently declared Mpox a public health emergency of international concern. In other news, Korea's producer prices rose yet again in July on the back of higher costs of agricultural and fisheries products. According to the Bank of Korea, the producer price index stood at 119.56 last month. Now, this is 0.3% higher on month. Despite a drop in utility bills, petroleum products and manufactured goods also pushed up the producer price index. On year, July's index is up 2.6%, posting an annual acceleration for 12 months in a row. Meanwhile, back on Tuesday, relevant government officials and ruling party lawmakers worked to frame Korea's budget proposal for next year with support for small business owners and families with children. Our Song Yoo-jin reports.
The government and ruling party will focus the 2025 budget on supporting vulnerable groups, boosting economic vitality, and preparing for the future.
As household finances are tight and domestic economic challenges are expected to persist, various physical and financial policy measures need to follow to address these issues.
During a meeting at the National Assembly on Tuesday, senior government officials and the People Power Party agreed to issue a record 5.5 trillion Korean won, or around $4 billion in gift certificates, offering discounts for goods at traditional markets to support small business owners.
We decided to reduce the number of restricted business types eligible for the coupons from the current 40 to 28.
To address the country's low birth rate and aging population, benefits for households with 2 or more children will be expanded. This includes increasing the subsidy for buying electric vehicles to up to 6 million won, or $4,500, which is double the current amount. Also, for families with 3 or more children, the discount rate on public transportation passes will be increased up to 50%. In response to growing safety concerns about electric vehicle batteries following recent EV fires, the two sides also agreed to deploy 90,000 EV chargers with fire prevention features and allocate extra funds for purchasing unmanned water cannons and other firefighting equipment. The PPP emphasized that the budget for next year aims to maintain sound financial management while also improving welfare for the socially vulnerable. The government plans to submit the final bill to the National Assembly on September 2nd. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
And the government has also pledged support for sellers and consumers bearing the brunt of the financial fallout of e-commerce platforms Tmall and WeMakePrice. At an economic ministerial meeting on Tuesday, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok said that the government would provide 1.6 trillion Korean won, or some $1.2 billion in financial support to those awaiting payment from the platforms. Now, this is an increase from the 1.2 trillion won proposed earlier this month. According to officials, as of Monday, the two e-commerce platforms owed sellers a total of around $600 million. Meanwhile, some $27 million have been refunded to consumers since the crisis began. Agricultural authorities are hoping the presence of smart technology at livestock farms will encourage a younger, tech-savvy demographic to embrace the trade. Our Lee Soo-jin explains.
You can tell just from the outside that this isn't your typical pig farm. This farm in Pyeongtaek, Gyeonggi-do province has adopted smart livestock technology that increases the PSY, or the number of piglets born per sow, per year. It also reduces the infamous foul odor of pig farms, making pig farming more appealing to young people, which, according to the Agriculture Ministry, is an urgent need.
The share of livestock farmers aged 70 and above has reached a record 34.3%. Without younger farmers, the livestock industry could stagnate.
And this farm is an example of how smart livestock technology can be used to attract younger farmers. Each morning, the manager checks the temperature and humidity of the farm and adjusts them in this control room, helping pigs, which are especially vulnerable to respiratory diseases, stay healthy. They're also kept well fed thanks to third-generation livestock technology that makes sure the pigs get the right amount of food. AI-enhanced cameras are used to detect when the feeders are empty, making it possible for them to be refilled automatically. Thanks to these ideal conditions, the PSY here is around 30, compared to the nationwide average of around 24 last year. But the most helpful change smart livestock technology can bring is arguably its role in reducing foul odors.
Before this technology, livestock farms were often plagued by numerous complaints. Getting rid of the smell not only benefits the people in the area, but it also allows for a more pleasant working environment.
Air released from the farm is gathered into an air shower room where a whopping 100 tons of water is used every hour to purify the air before it's released. More widespread use of smart technology at livestock farms like this is expected to encourage more young people to join the agriculture sector, giving it a much-needed boost. As part of its efforts to boost usage, the Agriculture Ministry is providing mentoring programs to teach young people how to use this technology. Continued efforts like this by the public sector will likely result in a new generation of farmers meeting the growing demand for meat through the use of smart livestock technology. 이수진, Arirang News.
And in a bid to better support small auto-related businesses, the government has in place a number of centres that offer free electromagnetic wave testing. Our Cha Young-kyung tells us why these centres and the testing are important.
As a driver starts up their car, electromagnetic waves emitted by the vehicle are detected by the antenna, causing the signals on the measurement system to fluctuate rapidly. This phenomenon isn't limited to electric vehicles. Most newly launched cars are equipped with various advanced driver assistance systems, such as lane departure warnings and collision prevention. These advanced systems rely on numerous high-powered electronic components within the vehicle, making it essential to conduct thorough electromagnetic wave tests to prevent potential malfunctions caused by interference. To address this need, central and local governments have established an electromagnetic wave testing facility where companies can conduct comprehensive wave tests free of charge. The facility is constructed from galvanized steel sheets that block electromagnetic waves, resulting in no cell phone reception inside. The facility supports a variety of tests, including interference tests for electromagnetic waves, radar performance assessments, antenna reception evaluations, and provides technical personnel for wave measurement. As electromagnetic wave applications expand across industries, the demand for large-scale testing has grown, leading to an increased utilization of the facility. Electronic equipment that relies on wireless signals requires rigorous electromagnetic wave testing. However, small and medium-sized businesses often struggle to conduct these tests independently due to the high costs involved. With this facility, all companies can now access up to 5 days of free testing, enabling them to perform essential evaluations without the financial burden.
Like its name, the electromagnetic wave testing facility provides suitable environment for wave tests for anyone. Also, we support high-end measurement equipment for free.
Currently, electromagnetic wave testing facilities are available in Seoul, Daegu, and Chungcheongbuk-do province. These facilities provide significant support for the growth of small and medium-sized businesses, while also meeting the testing needs of local companies that require electromagnetic wave assessments. Cha Young-kyung, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. We begin today in India, where demonstrations erupted on Tuesday in the country's western state of Maharashtra after 2 4-year-old girls were allegedly sexually assaulted by a cleaner at a school near Mumbai. According to the local media, protesters marching for justice halted trains by occupying a railway station and its tracks. Indian security forces attempted to disperse the protesters using tear gas and batons, and the protesters responded by pelting stones at the authorities. Train services resumed after 10 hours. Indian police said that the alleged perpetrator at the school in the town of Badlapur in the Tain district has been arrested while the state chief minister Eknath Shinde added that the case would be fast-tracked. Now to Italy, where the search for 6 missing people, including British tech tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter, continued into the dark of the night on Tuesday following an intense storm suspected to have sunk the luxury yacht on Monday. The British-flagged Beijing, a 56-meter-long super yacht, was carrying 22 people and anchored just off the port of Porticello when it was hit by what is believed to be a ferocious pre-dawn tornado over the water, also known as a watersprout, and sank. Specialist divers continue to search for 6 people, while one body recovered near the yacht on Monday is believed to be that of the chef of the Beijing, Canadian Antiguan Ricardo Thomas. Witnesses said that the vessel, anchored only 700 meters from Porticello, just east of Palermo, disappeared within minutes, despite naval experts saying a boat as big as the Beijing would have been designed to stay afloat for hours even after taking on water. Salvatore Coccina, head of civil protection in Sicily, leading the rescue mission, said there is little chance of finding more survivors. In Kenya, a man arrested over a month ago, suspected of killing some 42 women, including his wife, escaped from police custody on Tuesday in the country's capital, Nairobi. The alleged serial killer, 33-year-old Collins Jumaisi Kalusha, was arrested when the police discovered at least 6 bodies wrapped in plastic bags in an abandoned quarry, now used as a trash dump, which was located near his home. A police spokesperson said on Tuesday that Jumaisi broke out of the Jigiri police station along with 12 Eritrean nationals. Kenya Police Acting Inspector General Gilbert Masengeli added that the police have launched a manhunt to rearrest the escapees and that the force's preliminary investigation indicates that the escape was aided by insiders. Bolivian firefighters on Monday continued efforts to bring forest fires in the country's Santa Cruz region under control, with the month-long blaze already causing significant damage to residents, wildlife, and the landscape. According to an official report, the forest fires have devastated over 2 million hectares of land, with over 500 firefighters deployed in the Santa Cruz, Beni, and Pando regions. While the forest fires forced locals to flee and scorched the wildlife, a biodiversity team from Santa Cruz Natural Resources Directorate rescued animals, including anteaters and lizards, which will be given treatment before being released back to their original habitat. Kim Xiang, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Heavy rain has been pouring down in central regions due to Typhoon Jongdari, which weakened to a tropical depression last night. And through late this afternoon, the capital and Gangwon-do province could receive 30 to 50 millimeters an hour of downpours, along with strong winds. And central parts of Korea need to brace for a lot of rain into tomorrow. So a heavy rain watch is in place for most of the central areas in Chungcheongdo province. A wind advisory is in effect along the west coast, and a high seas advisory remains in place for waters of Jeju and parts of the West Sea. So please stay away from the water today. Temperature-wise, Seoul woke up to a new record of 31 consecutive tropical nights this morning. Highs should be about 7 degrees lower today, topping out at 30 degrees here in the capital. Daegu, Gyeongju, Jeju topping out at 34 degrees. Now, today's rain will not bring the much-needed weather shift to the country, so brace for heat through the end of the month. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Those are the top stories at this hour here in Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, and today we address Korea's food waste recycling. Do stay with us. The president also remains committed to boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of this latest.
To discuss the current security environment.
The United Nations most powerful body on global security, expressing hope stock markets around the world have taken a hit amid speculation that the US Federal Reserve Arirang.
히알루론산과 콜라겐의 진짜 만남, 히알루겐.
Different from a mixed complex, hyaluronic performs itself as a single ingredient, which is light but fully dense. Hyaluronic provides moisture and elasticity enhancement to skin at once. The total care to your skin concerns Hyaluronic by Mizon.
Why do Korean people have such a good skin?
I hate this place, stuck in this paradigm. Don't
is one of the few countries worldwide that boasts a nationwide system for food waste management, with 98% of such waste turned into feed, compost, or energy. Now, this is according to an American daily, the latest foreign media coverage of Korea's campaign against food waste. We have details up next. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Issues and Insiders for this Wednesday, August 21st here in Korea. I'm Min San-hee. Today we delve into the attention that Korea's food waste recycling campaign has been garnering in recent times. For this, I have Kwon So in the studio with me. So welcome back.
Hello, Sunny.
I also have Nicholas Roca, a journalist for French radio broadcaster RFI, live on the line. Nicholas, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
Right, so let's begin with details first about the latest foreign media coverage about South Korea's recycling of its food waste.
Right, the Washington Post earlier this month released an extensive coverage on how South Korea deals with food waste. It's titled, "South Korea Recycles 98% of its food waste. What can it teach the world?" So let's start with that dramatic figure, 98%. That, according to the report that cited South Korea's Ministry of Environment, is the percentage of food waste in the country that is turned into feed, compost, or energy. And how is this possible? Through the works at some 300 facilities that recycle almost all of 15,000 tons of daily food waste. That is then composted into fertilizer, fed to livestock, or made into biogas, a type of renewable energy. Thanks to the food waste treatment centers, food leftovers in Korea do not end up in the ground anymore, which not only pollutes the soil but releases methane. And it's not always been that way, though. 2 decades ago, 98% of food waste was discarded here in Korea. Geographic and demographic issues were what stopped the digging of new landfills and led to the change in the country's food disposal system. This inevitably also meant change for the individual people. Recycling of food waste has become a norm, which may have come with some resistance at first, but now citizens have not only gotten used to differentiating between what goes into the food waste bin or not. For example, eggshells, bones are a no, but they even face the reality of getting fined for throwing away food into regular trash, or they even have to pay for their own food waste. Electronic waste bins have appeared in recent years that charge residents on the weight of food waste. And we have those at my apartment as well. And I have to say I was a little annoyed at first, but now I think it's a great idea, and that I think even helps in ultimately reducing food waste in the first place. Now, restaurants, meanwhile, use special government-authorized trash bags for food disposal. And speaking of restaurants, it's not uncommon to see restaurant owners fine their customers for leaving leftovers or side dishes on their plates, or the Korean banchan. But, you know, they are mostly for free in Korea. That is why they do lead to more leftovers in some cases.
Right. Nicholas, I believe French news network France 24 also covered Korea's food waste recycling earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken. What was the gist of that particular coverage?
Well, I think it's the coverage that we all wanted to do in a way. It's just, in a way, following the food waste. Where does it start from? Starting from, you know, just a Korean grandmother. How does she recycle it? How does she make the differences? That's so I explained pretty well. I think. For us, when we come into this country, it's quite a shock to see how different it is. So my colleagues of France 24 first visited, this person's home, then went to see the recycling facilities, so how restaurants are treating food waste, and just overall try to explain to the people the recipe of Korea's success in that field, knowing that it was in 1995, if I'm correct, only 2% of food waste were recycled in the country. Most of it were buried in the ground, and now we've seen this dramatic change in such a short amount of time. So the idea was, what are the keys to Korean success in that matter? How did Korea make those dramatic change? Of course, there were the investments in the in the important facility, more than 300, if I'm correct, around the country. But there's also, as So explained, the behavior of the people that is a game changer. I felt that in Korea, and the report of France 24 shows it, there's this knowledge about what goes into the recycling bin or not, what should we do, and also the citizens are concerned because, as So explained, people pay for it. So yeah, I think the coverage was kind of introduction of the how Korea does it, and maybe what we should collectively do better in that field.
Right, and staying with foreign media coverage, so like I mentioned earlier, Korea's food waste recycling campaign, it's been making headlines for quite a while. It's a 20-year program, if I'm not mistaken. And that being said, could you perhaps chronicle the related coverage for us over the years?
Right, multiple global media outlets have been introducing Korea's proactive approach and successful results in handling food waste. And to be honest, I didn't know that we were doing such a good job, and many other countries are not. But that seems to be the case seen in the global coverage. Now, first off, the New York Times last year in June had an article that said how South Korea puts its food scraps to good use, mentioning how the Korean food waste system has been studied by governments around the world, with officials from China and Denmark having toured the country's facilities. New York City, it says, has been observing this system for years as well. The NYT also notes that despite similar programs existing in a number of places, quote, few, if any, other countries do what South Korea does on a national scale. Now, also in the same year, the U.S.'s Good News Network hailed Korea's system as, quote, the world's most sophisticated food waste disposal infrastructure. And Italy's TGCOM24 in June 2023 assessed Korea's food waste system as successful and a sustainable method, adding the system can be looked forward to set a trend worldwide. Also in the same year, India's Financial Express cited experts that believe, despite the burden of some $600 million that South Korea has to take annually to run its food waste program, the system has to be benchmarked by other countries. Meanwhile, a year before, The Guardian in 2022 had an article titled, South Korea has almost zero food waste. Here's what the U.S. can learn. And just like the recent Washington Post article that I mentioned, it's difficult to adopt Korea's system in a huge country like the U.S., but the article suggests the South Korean model, quote, illustrates some of the core principles that might guide the process. And I want to end with the World Economic Forum that in 2019 mentioned South Korea only recycled 2% of its food waste. Now it recycles 95%. 95 because this was back in 2019, so not at 98%, I guess. And the WEF also highlighted South Korea's technology behind this system.
Right, and so for the sake of some comparison, could you tell us a bit more about the tackling of food waste beyond Korea's borders?
Well, let's start in neighboring Japan, because very recently, just 2 days ago, the BBC introduced an interesting story evolving on efforts to recycle food waste back into food or feed through the process of fermentation. Japan, the world's 5th largest greenhouse gas emitter, has been struggling with food waste, as food accounts for some 40% of Japan's trash, with incineration resulting in significant greenhouse gas emissions. The founder of the Japan Food Ecology Center has found a solution to reducing that by turning human leftover food into high-quality pig feed by fermenting food waste. The unique method is receiving attention at the government level as well. Now, in the U.S., where the majority of food waste still ends up in landfills, the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration unveiled an initiative called the National Strategy for Reducing Food Loss and Waste and Recycling Organics. That was just a few months ago. The aim is to prevent food loss and food waste and increase the recycling rate for organic waste through consumer education campaigns, testing innovative waste reduction strategies, supporting organics recycling infrastructure, as well as growing the market for recycled organic products. Now, moving to Brazil, the biggest country in South America, produces around 20 million tons of food waste a year. The Brazilian government is developing a new policy on the national level, including guidelines to reduce food waste and implement composting systems starting in 2025. So next year, which also happens to be the year the country hosts the UN Climate Change Conference, or COP30. And the European Union and its members are committed to have per capita food waste at the retail and consumer level by 2030. There have been continuous calls, and reportedly progress is underway at the EU to actually introduce the world's first legally binding targets to reduce food waste. So this is all based on what I found, but based on from my own experience in Germany, I just want to mention that when I used to live in Germany, I just threw away my food waste into the regular trash bin. But I found out that since a few years ago, there's been an encouragement for people to use the so-called biotonne, so to actually now separate the trash. So I guess there's been efforts around the world.
Right, indeed. And Nicholas, you touched upon this earlier, but what was your experience with Korea's food waste recycling like while you were living here in the country? I mean, did you know, as Soa mentioned earlier, that eggshells and fish as well as chicken bones are part of daily waste and not food waste?
I learned that in Korea when I arrived. No, I was quite surprised, and it was some part of the getting used to when you arrive in a new country. I think the whole system was something I had to learn about. I didn't live in an apartment where I had the machine that allows to waste your waste and put it in a machine, etc. So I had to use the little yellow plastic bags. The fact that I had to pay for my food waste was also something quite new to me. But then, I also discovered the Korean culture and the banchan that creates also an important amount of food waste. And I realized slowly in my more than 3 years in Korea how things were working in the country and how pretty well organized they were. So that's why I also decided myself to do some of the coverage. I visited the facility. I went to see different restaurants to understand how also it works, because of course restaurants or big companies will create way more waste, and that might be where the biggest difference is made. If you have those big producers of waste that do it correctly, of course it's going to make a massive difference. But what also I understood was that there's this kind of individual mindsets of people to do things correctly on that field. I think it's probably because of 20 years or more of public incitation and the government putting programs, trying to push forward program and to raise the awareness on the matter. But yeah, I had my neighbors telling me, I'm not sure you did the right thing with the food waste. Eggshells shouldn't be there, and neighbors trying to explain how things work. So yeah, people were definitely motivated to do things right, and that was a massive difference for me comparing to what I knew in Europe. As so I described, in France for the longest time we were only sharing food waste with the rest of the trash, the general trash, and that's still the case in many places.
Right, but earlier this year, the start of this year, that is, Nicholas, France actually has made organic waste recycling mandatory now. Could you tell us a bit about the reason behind this regulation, how it works there?
So at first it was a European law. In the EU, how it works is that first the European Commission, the European Parliament passes a law, and then each nation have to implement it in their national law. So there were a few different laws, 2018, 2020, that pushed for countries to do it, but it became mandatory in France this 1st of January. Now it is those waste are handled by the municipality. So each city has to decide and offer to its citizen a solution for its food waste, which also creates a situation where it is handled differently in the territory. So depending on the willingness of a city to act on this as quickly as possible, the possibility offered to the citizen might be different. If I just take this example of where I'm staying at in Paris right now, it's very different in France, because each building has a few different places to throw their waste, for the glass, for the plastic, and other divisions, but there's no option for food waste right now. In some cities, it might be in the streets. It's just a small place to throw the waste, but things are still ongoing, and so there's a willingness to do it. It's pretty late, but it's not done yet, and I think a lot of the mindsets have to change in France. It has to become a reflex. There's not a lot of knowledge of what goes where when it comes to food waste. If we go to the countryside, things are different because a lot of people have gardens, and they've kind of taken this habit to use their food waste in order to help their plant grow and put those organic waste to use. So this is not really counted as food waste in France. It's something it's impossible to put into statistics. How can we know what people do with their food waste in their own home if they just use it and don't throw it away? So it really depends on which city we're talking about. The implementation is still pretty fresh, and the willingness of the national government to act is not that strong in a way, because the European law has called for each European country to act on it a few years ago, and it took a while for it to pass in the French in the French Parliament, in the French law system. So yeah, there's we're at the beginning of the road here, so to speak, in terms of food waste.
Right, so still in the early stages then. Meanwhile, back here in the country, so despite the applause that Korea has been garnering for its efforts against food waste, I believe challenges do remain, right?
Right. While Korea appears to be the front runner in food waste management, it's not really doing well in creating less waste. The country creates around 5.5 million tons of food waste annually, with no big change having happened over the past 5 years. So despite the improved treatment of food waste, people have been throwing away more compared to decades ago. According to the Environment Ministry, in 2019, around 70% of food waste was generated by households and small restaurants, that resulting in an economic loss of over 20 trillion won per year, of $15 billion, and food waste disposal costs amounting to around 860 billion won, or $647 million. Now, the Washington Post, in its coverage on Korea's food waste recycling, said the government was not able to persuade citizens to waste less food, despite people paying for the costs and their own efforts in having to sort and recycle their food. And speaking of sorting, another challenge that remains from the current food recycling system is that farmers are reluctant towards feeding their livestock from the food waste that's turned into feed, as there is no guarantee that no harmful things like a piece of plastic, metal, or a toothpick could have been mixed in the food waste. Meanwhile, what makes the reduction of food waste difficult is a change in lifestyle over the past years. People are eating out more, and they are using delivery services, and also families shrunk. Smaller sized households, including single-person households, lead to more leftovers.
Right. Meanwhile, Nicholas, you mentioned earlier that France's fight against food waste is still in its early stages, and that essentially we need to change the mindset of the people. That being said, do you suppose a campaign, perhaps a nationwide campaign to raise better awareness about the need to fight food waste would be better in France right now?
I mean, they might try it. I'm not sure how well it would succeed in France, but I think definitely there's the first thing that would need to change is to make it available for everyone in a very easy way. Just to take the example of my mother, she's in her town of Lyon, and it's very easy to do it. So she's seen the place where she could throw it. So now she started doing it, taken interest into it, looked on the internet what goes where, and she's doing it. But if you don't have that offer available, especially in a major city, it's not something that you're going to go out of your way to do it. So probably a campaign should help, but also investments in infrastructure, trying to find innovative solutions. For instance, I think in Korea, the fact that you pay for your food waste entices you, first of all, to produce a little bit less food waste, but also to do things correctly. I'm not sure how well things things could work in France on that front because of differences in the size of the country and the way the society works. I think there needs to be some sort of changes. It will take some time, but the first steps really are, according to me, to just offer the possibility to the citizens to do things correctly as quick as possible. And because of the fact that it's a municipality prerogative, that it's the cities that have to decide, it depends highly. If you have a green mayor, for instance, things usually went quicker, but if it's a different political color, it might take more time. Then in Paris also it's very complex. The city is divided in districts, so some district might be quicker than others to do things. But I think slowly, if you see everybody around you doing it, and if everything is available for you to do it, things will naturally start changing. I think that might be more efficient than probably a campaign that you will see on TV and that people might or not take seriously. But it's part of a global public policy where you have to, yes, do this work of sensibilization of the people, but also offer them the positive solution to sort their food waste as well as they can.
Right, for sure. And also, in a very sobering note, so a UN report back in March showed that the world wastes over 1 billion meals a day. Could you tell us a bit about that?
That really is the dilemma. While tons of food is going to waste every day, hundreds of millions of people are left starving. According to the latest UN Environment Program Food Waste Index Report 2024, published in late March, in 2022, 5.5 billion tons of food were available, compared to 5.3 billion tons in 2019. Now, at first glance, it might look like a positive development, but when it comes to food waste, the world wasted 1.05 billion tons, up from 931 million 3 years before, and that's 19% of food available to consumers. If we take a look at the sources of food waste by sector, households were responsible for around 60% of the total food waste in 2022. 28% was wasted at the food services level, and retail accounted for 12%. In its key findings, the UNEP report notes that while over 1 billion meals a day have been wasted in 2022, 783 million people were affected by hunger, and a third of the world dealt with food insecurity, stressing that food waste impacts the global economy and fuels climate change, natural loss, and pollution.
Right, some very grave numbers, if I may say so myself. All right, so as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today. And Nicholas, over in Paris, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you so much, Sunny.
Now, prevention, as most of us know, is better than cure. That being said, some point out the best way to fight food waste is to put less on your plate from the start. Thank you for watching.
AI is all around us. The military domain is no exception. Responsible AI in the military domain. Re-aim. It is not the technology that defines our future. It is how we use it. Responsible AI for safer tomorrow. Re-aim Summit. See you in Seoul.